Welcome to the Vitruvian Man Podcast. This is your host, Vinamre Kasanaa. In this podcast, we cover the human form in all its physical and mental glory. We've got two big announcements. I'm being joined by my good friend, Adrian Thomas, who's now the co-host in this podcast. We're combining our cumulative ling forces together to serve you a platter of awesomeness. And then the second thing is we got this awesome location, the College of Communication at BU. So we're going to be filming in this podcast room from now onward.
Yes.
Which is awesome. Quick thing about Adrian, he's a journalism student at BU. He's done his fair share of journalism work. Really excited to have him here. And without further ado, let's introduce our guest for today. On the right corner of the ring, we have Tristan Stewart, who's a yoga teacher, specifically practices Bhakti Yoga, and is a musical therapy student at Berklee College of Music.
What up?
And on the left is cue for Adrian to speak.
Hello, Ben Allen.
Yes.
Ben Allen is the vice president of the BU Zen community. They meet in the basement of Marsh Chapel on BU's campus every Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. And so Ben and Tristan are here today. They're going to talk a little bit about mindfulness and meditation and yoga. And we also want to talk a little bit about how these practices can positively affect the issue of mental health in our society right now, especially with college students. So we'll talk about that a little later. But first off, so we've introduced you guys. You can each just go one at a time. Tell us how you guys got into yoga, mindfulness, and meditation. What was something that inspired you to get into it, and how has it changed your life so far?
Okay.
Ben.
So I started meditating regularly about a year and a half ago. And I really got into meditation and spirituality through my father, surprisingly enough. He's been a huge inspiration for that because he's always been into like woo-woo spiritual things, and he's been a conspiracy theorist for a while, and he's been totally into all sorts of ways of alternative medicine, stuff like that. He's very much a free thinker in that way. He kind of told me to start meditating because he was like, oh, you seem like an anxious high schooler when I was in high school. And I did not listen to him. I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. Right. And then I realized when I got to college, I was like, wait, actually, there's some science behind this because I'm a very analytical, scientific guy. So I was like, okay, there's some science behind this. Let me try it out. And wow, I tried it out. And you don't just try out meditation once, like you have to do it consistently. So I made a bet to myself. I said, okay, I'm going to do it consistently for a month, every single day. And about week 2, I started to feel these incredible benefits, and it's changed my life profoundly. I'll get more into the benefits, obviously later in the podcast, but it's just changed the way I see the world, my relationship to myself, how I manage my emotions, my stress, my self-esteem, how I'm able to cultivate joy and happiness and gratitude, and just things that make life like just so much more incredible to live in every way. And it's kind of something you have to experience to understand, but I can try and verbalize it the best I can. So yeah,
That's awesome, man. What about you, Tristan? What's your journey been like?
So back in 2015, the fall semester, I was a third semester at Berklee, and literally my life consisted of just nonstop weed smoking and practicing guitar all day.
I feel that on a spiritual level.
All day. And it was fucked up because it was all I was doing. I had no balance whatsoever.
And so you weren't doing any sort of yoga at
None.
all?
I was very unhealthy. My
He was
diet...
doing yoga of the Mary Jane, if you know about that. Really cool sect.
So essentially what happened was I pushed myself so hard, basically masking all stress I was inflicting on my body day in and day out with weed, that one night I was at the Boston Public Library and all of a sudden my heart's just pounding through my fucking chest. Like, I don't know what's going on, and I'm a musician, so I know tempos, and I know the fucking rate of my heart in my chest is very bad. It was up at like, when I first noticed it was like 160, and I was at just like a calm rest. And then it was like increasing so fucking badly that it was like pounding through my toes. And this is a long story, but I'll try to make it brief. So I'm rushed to the ER, and like 4 hours later, slowly my heart like slows from like 190 when I got to the ER down to like somewhat normal. And from that day forward, my life was just turned upside down. Like, I was inflicted with a bunch of obscure health issues, like chronic mental fatigue, physical fatigue, a ton of issues with my heart that were all ongoing. And so I had to drop out of Berkeley, and I just started seeing doctor after doctor after doctor, and all of them, from like the best of Boston, neurologists, cardiologists, they all told me on paper I was healthy, and they had no idea what was going on with me. And so I reached a point like 4 months in with no improvement whatsoever. It was so bad that I realized I had two options. I could either give up on myself, or I could take it into my own hands. And so that's when I started teaching myself about like holistic healing, about meditation, about yoga, because I needed something. I couldn't just like persist in this despair anymore. And so slowly but surely, after implementing lifestyle change after lifestyle change, from diet to daily meditation and daily yoga practices, 6 months later, roughly all my ailments faded into the background when doctors, some of Boston's best, had no idea how to offer me any help. And it just blew me away so profoundly that I felt compelled to then take a teacher training, and that's why I'm teaching yoga today. And
really quick, when you were going through all these different health ailments, were you prescribed anything? Were you prescribed any antidepressants? Were you prescribed anti-anxiety meds?
That's an interesting question,
What
because
were you...
my doctor tried to get me on Prozac, but I'm like, no, bitch, I'm not doing that.
You know what's funny?
Put your foot
So
down.
I was prescribed Prozac back in August, and I'm in the process of weaning myself off right now. I'm quitting it.
Yeah.
You can't quit that shit immediately, but
Yeah,
it's something
yeah.
that you have to wean yourself off of. And I'm in the process. I'm probably by next week I won't be taking anymore, because it just physically, it just didn't make me feel good. It messed with my digestive system, and so it's a very, very strong drug. So this happened when you were a sophomore, correct?
Yeah.
And then you took a year off, and then
Year and a half off.
Yeah. And this is your
I'm
how many years have you been back at Berkeley now since
So-
all this happened?
This time last year, so the fall
Okay.
of 2017 was my first semester back.
Okay.
So now I'm like 6.5 semesters
So
in.
you're not even a full 2 years into like practicing yoga, and you're already an instructor, and it's changed your life immensely, right?
Yeah, profoundly, like I can't imagine.
And you had not done yoga prior to this kind of breakdown that you had,
No,
right?
my first class was 5 months in to my health ailments, and I remember laying there at the end, like God was speaking to me, like, holy fuck, I don't know why, but
Wow.
there's something here. I need to keep doing this.
So one of the things you mentioned when you were talking about how you kind of came to yoga was you were masking your emotions and all the stuff all the stress inside you through consistently smoking weed and consistently playing guitar and kind of not paying attention to whatever was happening inside. And Ben, this is somewhere where you can also chime in.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So you guys, you practice meditation, you practice yoga, and you teach that as well. How can these practices help us understand these masks and help them come out?
So I want to weigh in on that a little bit. Basically, there's something taught in the mindfulness and meditation sphere, that whole niche, which is something called surrender. And it's basically about surrendering to the circumstance that you have now. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you don't want to go change it. Like if you're really super poor and you're living in a really poverty situation, it doesn't mean, accept that. You should try and get out of that situation if it's impacting your health or your family, yes. But it also means letting go of this attachment to a certain outcome. So for example, surrendering to, if you surrender to pain, the pain will actually go away. Surprisingly enough. And not everyone is like, so if you have emotional pain, if you have certain emotional pain, if you surrender and allow yourself to go deeper into that emotional pain, that pain will actually subside, which is what's wild because it's counterintuitive. A lot of people think, okay, you're going to feel pain, you're going to try and escape that as much as you can, but you're just holding off the inevitable. You're going to end up having to feel that emotion anyway. Do you know how people repress their emotions and then it comes out like boom, like out of nowhere, someone just flips, right? They go have a breakdown or something. That's because they're not surrendering to the moment of that they're feeling those emotions and releasing them. Because
that's something really interesting is because when you say that sort of thing comes out, it's this in psychology, it's a concept called the shadow. and it's like the parts of yourself that you repress manifest in others, and then you kind of have a visceral reaction to that. You
Yes.
either get super annoyed, you resent that person, or you admire them. So, for example, if you want glamour and if you have the need for glamour and you've repressed that part of yourself, right? You see celebrities in magazines, you are kind of filled with a sense of over admiration for them because you cannot manifest that in yourself. If you know what I mean. And the same thing is true for negative emotion also.
Yeah, and it's interesting because there's this whole thing about surrendering. People think that surrender is weakness, but it's actually the opposite. Surrender is true strength, because when you're surrendering, you're vulnerable. You're putting yourself in a vulnerable situation, and that's where true strength is able to come out. If you're masking your emotions, you're trying to hide them, that actually shows weakness, and that shows that you're not able to, that you're escaping that. You're not going to face those emotions in the moment. If you surrender to the present moment and basically embrace the emotions you're feeling in that moment, you're more likely to just let them go in that moment than if you like try and resist them. That emotion is still going to be there, right? And if you try and resist it and it builds up over a long amount of time and keeps on building up, eventually it'll come out somehow in a very negative way. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on it.
So let's move a little bit. No, go ahead.
You were going to say something?
Yeah, I just want to offer some sort of nuanced points on that topic.
Absolutely.
A lot of people come to meditation and they try it for a week and it's hell. And that is correct, that facing your emotion you need to process that. But it's not a quick fix, and that's what we look for today with like prescriptions, the magic pills.
It's not quick.
And that is true, what has been said, that if you face whatever negative emotion it is, it will subside. But that could maybe be a month, it could be a year, it could be 5 years, depending on what you're dealing with. And so, like, bringing it back to that little conversation we had about the Prozac, is like the reason I knew I couldn't go on that stuff is because I needed to feel what I was feeling.
Yeah.
If I was just willing to mask that pain, then I wouldn't actually get to the root of what was going on. And so, yeah, I was feeling anxious as hell and a lot of depression, but feeling that stuff allowed me to eventually get to the root of what was going on. So if you're sitting in meditation and all of a sudden you're feeling this anxiety, this depression that wasn't there 20 minutes ago, well, people were like, well, what the fuck? I thought this gets rid of I thought this meditation gets rid of this stuff. Well, actually, no, that's how it works. It's like,
It's
you will feel it and you'll go through that hell, but that's what allows it to eventually subside.
Yeah.
Is you have to feel whatever it is you're not allowing yourself to feel.
Because it's just you and that thought, and you're acknowledging. It's from my understanding, mindfulness and meditation, it's all about acknowledgement.
Yes.
Right?
Of yourself.
Yeah.
Yes. It's
Yeah.
self-acknowledgement, and it's even deeper than that. It's self-acknowledgement, and it's it's true acceptance.
Yeah.
So when like you were definitely talking about the nuances for sure. It definitely takes time, and that's why like the first week you meditate, you're gonna be like, oh, I don't feel any different. Well, no, because it's a practice. It's something that your mind's not used to being quiet. Your mind's not used to subsiding its thoughts. So it's gonna take a little bit longer for your mind to get used to that feeling of serenity in meditation.
Yeah.
And once you build the practice in to like have a routine, you'll start to see results. But it takes a little bit of time, and people nowadays want the instant gratification. They're like, oh, I'm feeling this way, and so they get drunk or they smoke weed or do other things to instantly subside it. But that's just not right. Or take prescriptions in it, and that will instantly take it away. But in the long run, you're going to be worse off, because it does not get rid of that emotion. It does not solve the problem. It's just a band-aid.
Momentary. It's a momentary escape.
Instead of actually like
delayed gratification.
Right. And what's scary is you meditate, and like you were saying, stuff gets brought up, and that's what it does, because you're numbing yourself normally. You're trying to escape
most people
it.
quit at that point. It's like, because the stuff is coming up, oh, meditation is bad, I feel bad, so fuck it.
You actually have to work through that, and that's actually going to make you better, because you're working through those things through looking into yourself and saying, whoa, okay, this is something I have to work on,
Now that we're talking about like, looking at yourself and kind of letting emotions come up as they are in meditation, college students are like one of the top markets for meditation apps like Calm and Headspace. Is I was discussing this with Adrian before that. It's like I took a psychology test and it showed that I was highly neurotic. Like I was in the 86th percentile. For users, for listeners who don't know what neuroticism is, it's basically a higher propensity toward negative emotion, toward withdrawal from life in general, right? So in that same test, there was this study which said that the biggest antidote to neuroticism, and that's something that a lot of college students are nowadays, is mindfulness. Is because then you can kind of process your emotions and take the seat of the observer and just observe your emotions as opposed to being caught up in that. Because when you're having a negative thought loop, you tend to stick with it to the point of, self-loathing, anxiety, and then, you just withdraw from life completely to the point that you don't even go to classes, which has happened with me often. Yeah. And that's something that a lot of college students face, is that mindfulness or meditation, when introduced to college campuses, there's such buzzwords that they incite a lot of enthusiasm, but it also dies down because there's not proper methods and ways to go about it. Mm-hmm. So you guys are both college students. Mm-hmm. Can you talk to us about your experiences with other college students when you introduce meditation or something along those lines?
And really quick too, I'll just chime in. There have been these new ads put up all over. You might have seen these about student health services, behavioral medicine, all the mental health department of student health.
Yeah, well, because it's a big deal nowadays.
Yeah. There's all these ads put up around campus that have all these statistics about, X% of BU students feel this way, and it's like all about depression and feeling overwhelmed and feeling like they can't have a grasp on all of the stuff they're involved in their classes and whatnot. So it is a very prominent problem.
It is.
So, yeah. Speak to that a little bit.
I think the biggest issue with college students is we have way too much going on. Like, if you consider what the human being was designed to process in terms of stress and what the average human being throughout the centuries, throughout the millennia has been processing, I feel like the average college student today has experienced some fucked up, exponentially larger number or amount of stress than
just
say
information.
Yeah, the ancient mind was understimulated as opposed to today.
Exactly.
Like the caveman was understimulated.
Like, who's bored today ever?
Yeah.
It's like nobody. And if you're bored, maybe like 3 seconds later you're on your iPhone, like looking up Instagram or whatever else, or frantically studying for something. So a big byproduct of that is people are so up in their heads, and that, like, the mind, the intellect is the birthplace of anxiety and depression. And I guess the talk about mental health, maybe we're going about it from the wrong way. Was it Einstein who said you can't fix a problem with the same thing that created it?
Yeah. It was something like the person who tries to repeat the same thing over and over again without any change is delusional, or something like that.
That's the definition of insanity.
Yeah, the definition of insanity. Yeah.
So this what I'm talking about is a little different. It's if you create anxiety with your mind, you can't use the mind to solve that anxiety.
It's Eckhart Tolle who said that.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Anyway, I'm not sure if any one person said it. It's just sort of been like
it's a common motif that runs
exactly.
across spirituality.
So
speakers.
in yoga, or in bhakti yoga especially, the meaning of the word yoga, surprisingly enough to the Western practitioner, is to commune with the divine. And in the yogic system of philosophy, the divine is centered at the heart. And I feel like that's what the average person today is completely severed from. We're like, the way I think of it, a bunch of airheads who almost like 99% of your energy is running through your mental processes. And when do you ever take the time to know what's going on in your heart and your emotions? And I think Alan Watts said something to the effect of, we're a bunch of people in a rush to go nowhere. Because if you're not in tune with your heart center, if you don't take that time to realize, what is my purpose? Like, where is this all taking me? Then you're running around like a chicken with its head cut off with no purpose, and you're doing a lot but getting nowhere. And so I feel like the average person today could learn to do maybe a third the amount and get literally a whole lifetime more done. Because if you learn how to stop, not endlessly taking action after action, task after task, you can get to a place where each and every breath you breathe, every every word you speak, every task you accomplish actually
Has meaning.
comes from something with purpose,
Yeah.
rather than just like being a fucking leaf in the wind, essentially.
Yeah.
Right. It's like the 80-20 principle. Like 20% of what you do gives you 80% of the results. It's living the minimalist
Right.
lifestyle, kind of
Yeah.
decluttering yourself.
The Pareto
That's a pretty
distribution?
principle, yeah.
Yeah. It's about decluttering yourself and knowing like certain things you do will get you the same thing as what you were doing before without all the fluff.
Yeah.
So
It's busy work versus essential work.
Right, exactly. It's like, what is this actually doing to move me on my path? And you might not know what your path is, but that's okay as long as you're doing something you love. That's your path, in my opinion. So, yeah, that's something. Yeah.
I guess another thing I want to get your guys' opinion on, how effectively has, because obviously there are a lot of benefits with everything that we've been talking about, and if this mindfulness, meditation, yoga, it's gradually being integrated into the mainstream, but what are, I guess, the people who are bringing it into the mainstream, because you guys seem to have a good solid grasp, very knowledgeable on this topic.
Yeah.
Is it what's being done right, especially bringing all of this stuff that's rooted in an ancient tradition from our culture?
Mm-hmm.
What are people doing right in bringing yoga, mindfulness, and meditation to our society, and then what are people doing wrong?
Okay. So this is a very interesting question, and there's definitely a lot of different cultural ideals we have over here in the Western world than in the East, where these practices originated. And I think what it comes down to is the spirituality aspect of it. A lot of people on the West, I'm not saying everybody, but a lot of people don't want to have a religion or a spiritual aspect connected to it because they believe that that's not rooted in science or facts or some sort of tangible thing. They're like, oh, the spiritual realm, because they can't see it and because it's not necessarily proven, they don't like to associate with it. So I think that what we need to do is really say, okay, yeah, we can teach the spiritual side of it. We can teach that stuff, and that's all great. And like I personally, prescribe to the spiritual stuff. I'm not religious myself, but I'm spiritual. But I also understand that you have to separate the spirituality from the practicality. And we can talk about it we can talk about meditation in a spiritual way, and we can talk about it in a practical way. And so here in the U.S., I think what you really need to do is you need to talk about it in a practical way, because people here are a lot more in tune to thinking like that. They're like, okay, how is this going to benefit me? How is this going to change my life? What can I do? What's step 1, step 2, step 3? And you can break it down like that. And then oftentimes what you'll find is when people start doing the practical aspect, they naturally start to be interested in the spiritual aspect. So for me, I started doing the practical stuff. And then I did the philosophy behind Zen, and I started reading that. And that was incredible, right? But I started with the practical stuff and saw the benefits, and I'm like, oh wow, there's some merit to this. This is incredible. I'm seeing results. Boom. Then I dove into the spiritual stuff. So that was a little bit of an interesting thing. So I think that to bring it more mainstream, you need to have kind of connect with what people kind of want and what they vibe with. And what they're vibing with is practical solutions to everyday stresses and problems, and how can you solve that?
What's your take on it, Tristan?
So again, just back to the question, all this is being brought to the West. What are people doing right in bringing it into the mainstream here, and then what are people doing wrong?
Well, I do think a practical aspect is necessary. Like in the beginning, people need a reason to come to it. Just like I was looking for a certain personal gain, which was healing. But I think the problem in the mainstream is that it becomes too watered down and too superficial. Like
Beer yoga, hot yoga, metal
goat yoga. Are you kidding me? Like, what is this?
Yeah.
And people talk about like a grocery list of benefits you'll get for it. Like you'll be less stressed. You'll be less this and less that. You know how many friends I have who are like, oh yeah, I need to go to yoga. I should do it just like I should buy the organic fucking kale or whatever.
But they don't. Right.
Drink
And
like
it's
kombucha.
too superficial because like the very essence of this practice, if you're operating on this level of what am I getting out of it, that is the definition of ego. Mm-hmm. Ego is like, okay, let me stack up all the things that are in it for me, and then I'll judge whether or not I'm going to get enough out of this. And the essence of a true meditation practice, of actually getting into what this stuff is all about, is letting go entirely of any sense of what's in it for me.
Then who do you do it for?
That's what you got to dig deep into figuring out for yourself, because I can't give you that answer. I can tell you for me, in my deepest practice, it's to serve the highest love I possibly can. But you post that on a flyer outside Yoga Works, no one's coming to your fucking class. Yep. So...
Yeah, I think I agree with you on a certain extent. I think that it's everyone has an ego when they when they haven't meditated. Like, obviously meditation helps you get rid of that ego, but you come into it with an ego, and that's plain and simple. Like some people maybe already have a sense of removing themselves, detaching themselves from their ego, and they're able to separate their mind and body, and they're able to do that. But a lot of people who are in their heads all the time and out of their ego, they start the practice in their heads, and through the practice they end up getting more and more removed from that, and they end up not associating with their ego. So I think that it's super important to not be in your head and not be associated with the ego, but at the same time, like, for people to actually start and take the leap, they've got to have, people don't do things unless they see a benefit. And humans, the same thing. Like, you don't eat unless you don't feel hungry unless you need to eat. Or I don't know. There's probably another analogy that's better. Like, you won't do something unless it helps you survive, or it helps you progress as a human being. And you'll obviously do things out of kindness and charity, but that's a different thing, right? This is you trying to solve a stress, or you trying to solve a certain problem. Yeah. And so humans have to say, okay, I'm not going to just do this for the sake of doing it. Which would be great if we could all just go and be like, okay, now I'm just going to meditate just because it's fun. Yay, let's do this. Let's do this, right? But for people to like sit down, and meditation like isn't necessarily hard, but it's also not easy. It's kind of what you make of it. But for people just to take like 20 minutes out of their day, sit down, or even 5, sit down and just sit there and not think, they have to kind of have a certain objective. And even though the point is to not have an objective in the beginning, for people to start, they're going to have an objective. Plain and simple. And in order for them to like see, okay, this is why I'm doing this is the purpose for me to do this, they're going to have an objective, which is interesting. So
I kind of want to bring it back to what you said about how meditation is in the West, like the things that are being done right and the things that are being done wrong. So I actually had the privilege to visit a couple of monasteries this summer and like see the Buddha's meditation practice in all of its full manifestations. In India, yes. And one thing really interesting that struck with me is that, in the West, when you embark on a meditation practice, even if you're like someone who goes to the office, right, and you want to meditate 5 minutes a day, it's from a really individual standpoint, like you guys alluded to. It's more from the fact that I feel stressed, maybe this will help me calm my thoughts, and then I can function, and then on another level, then I can serve people better. I can be better. What I found in the monasteries was really opposite. It's like, you basically let go of everything you have, all your belongings, everything else, and you dedicate yourself to a life of meditation forever. And you live in a commune with others who meditate, and that's your life. So it's not like you can take one aspect of meditation and then, still be a farmer, or take another aspect of meditation and be a businessman. No, you must dedicate your whole life to it. That's a more sort of, I guess, the original grounding base where it comes from. But the reason meditation has become so popular in the West is because its practical elements can be extrapolated and used in everyday life, and that's why a lot of us are attracted to it. I mean, even like from back home also, like I would never go to a monastery and like live there my entire life, but because I had access to those sort of resources, I could go about my day, but then also incorporate meditation into my life. So that's just another perspective on this.
Just to digress for a second. You must hate Lululemon, Tristan.
I try not to hate anybody.
Okay. Yeah. That's a good answer. That's a good answer. I don't know, though. I see a lot of people, very superficial, like non-yogi people who wear Lululemon. It always makes me laugh. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I've been to so much superficial stuff in Boston. I don't want to say it's necessarily bad either, because for what it is, I mean, I've been to like black light yoga classes.
Yeah.
I've gone to certain
It sounds
studios.
crazy, man.
Certain studios who have teachers on their schedule who actually offer a practice that is grounded in the depth of what we're talking about. But other teachers also who are running a hip hop yoga class that is to Cardi B.
Yeah.
And while I don't believe that's actually yoga, you know, it may be a step in the right direction, or in the very least, it's not doing any harm.
Yeah.
You know, maybe instead of listening to Cardi B, like ruining yourself on the cycle for the.
You could put on some Krishna Das, you know.
Well, what makes yoga so powerful is the mind-body connection, and so and the mental aspect of it as well. It's not just a physical thing. So I think that, and you could probably add on to this, but you know, to practice it with like hip hop yoga, where you're sitting there dancing to a tune, or you know, you're doing the body. You're not really thinking about the mental practice of yoga. So is that correct?
It's all about the intention, man. You could be. I mean, I went to Elliot Hulse's grounding camp, and we were listening to some of the Kanye West. Some of the songs were to Kanye West, right? But the intention behind it was walk around this room right now and just connect with that badass motherfucker in you that cannot be fucked with. Like, and so in that sense, you were cultivating a very profound practice that is useful, like self-help and personal development. Is Kanye West exemplifying that? Not at all. But who knows? Maybe some people, maybe some white chick in Lululemon listening to Cardi B and Down Dog might have a spark of inspiration. So who knows? I don't necessarily want to label that as good or bad.
It's whatever is accessible to them, you know. It's like you can't expect everyone to go down the yogi's path, like you say. It's not for everyone, but even a little shred of meditation, some mindfulness can work wonders for most people.
And it's not going to change everybody's life. It might just be one tool in their day that helps them be less of a nutty human being, and that's cool too. I've been wondering during this whole conversation whether or not this stuff, as we're like in the true depth of what yoga actually means, if it can ever become mainstream at all. And that's because like the people whose lives are profoundly changed and transformed from this stuff, it is sort of a veering off of the beaten path for sure. So, and a lot of the stories, like I think like mine, which are life-changing, it comes from dire circumstances. And, you know, not everyone's going through those experiences. But also it's good to know maybe the chick who in 10 years has a severe existential crisis and has been going to the hip-hop yoga classes, like starts to find a different teacher who's offering more to the physical practice, and who knows, so...
Yeah, just to quickly wrap things up now, because we're almost out of time. One great tip you can give, both of you can give to anyone who's struggling with their thoughts right now, struggling with depression, anxiety, and how mindfulness can help that. Just one quick tip.
Cool. Yeah, I'll go first. Great. So one tip I can give you guys is if you want to start your meditation practice, you can think of it as being try to be in your body. So what that means is, you know how athletes are, you know, perform. They're always in their body when they're doing their thing. So try and get in touch with the sensations in your body. So particularly like, you know, your legs, your navel area, your stomach, being in your body and having your body rooted in this like level of energy. Basically shuts off your mind. So you're able to not think, and you're able to be in a meditative state by being in your body. So try, and one practical tip I can give you is when you, if you're listening to this podcast and you're not at home, when you get home, or if you are at home, sit down in a chair and close your eyes and take like 10 really, really deep breaths. And while you're doing that, try and feel your toes. Just like not feel them, like actually like reach down to feel them, but like just sit there and like try and visualize and feel the sensations happening in your toes. And then once you can feel a little sensation, it's subtle. It's not going to be something incredible. It's not going to be like this big. It's a very, very subtle feeling. And once you feel it in your toes, you're going to work your way up to your ankles, and you're going to work your way up your legs and your knees, and you can do it for as long as you like, and you work your way up your body. And you try and feel every part of your body. And it's a super, super subtle energy. It's nothing that's going to be like, whoa, oh my God, holy shit, I feel my body. It's going to be this very subtle thing that you'll kind of notice, but it won't be that big of a deal. And you could, in like, as soon as you open your eyes, like, you'll lose it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But practicing that every day, and practicing just like sitting down, taking 10 deep breaths, and just feeling your toes, that in itself is going to help you get in touch with getting into your body. So
awesome.
try that.
That's an awesome insight. What about you?
I'd say, first and foremost, go willingly to the places that scare you. Seek out those experiences. And instead of trying to figure it out in your mind, whatever that is, instead of trying to figure out fear, figure out your insecurities, figure out your weaknesses, just tell your brain to shut the fuck up and feel. Just breathe. Just be with whatever that is. And ask yourself, what is my heart asking me to do? Where is my heart leading me in the face of this fear and this discomfort? And then allow that to lead.
Awesome.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think breathing is the number one thing. The number one thing that basically can shut off your mind and get you into your body, like you're talking about as well, is just your breath, focusing on your breath. So
we are out of time though. So like Adrian, would you like to like say the final goodbyes to our listeners, and then I can kind of talk about the promotion stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Thank you so much, guys, for being here.
Yeah, my pleasure.
We
Thanks
really,
for
really
having us.
appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
thank you so much.
This was the new and improved edition of the
Vitruvian
Vitruvian Man
Podcast
Podcast.
2.0. Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
I love it.
And I think this has
Bigger
been
dicks, bigger
this has
conversations.
been no, seriously, but this has been a really like cool, inspiring conversation, and you guys said a lot of stuff that I'm gonna take with me moving forward now. So thank you so much, guys, for
Likewise.
being here.
Yeah, if you guys have social media handles that you'd like people to follow, let us know now.
Yes, Tristan the Yogi, both on Instagram and YouTube.
Tristan the Yogi, Instagram and
Yes.
YouTube. Yeah, you have a YouTube channel also.
Yep.
Check his YouTube channel out. Really cool stuff about spirituality and yoga. He's a practitioner of the Yin Yoga technique as well as Bhakti Yoga.
Yes, I teach in Cambridge also, by the way. 5 Doors Yoga right in Central Square.
Yeah. For all the listeners in Boston, 5 Doors Yoga in Central Square, Cambridge. And for Ben,
Yeah, for me, you can follow the BU Zen community on Instagram at ZenMindfulBU. It's a brand new Instagram account. We just started doing our promotions and our marketing, so follow that. And if you're really interested in getting into Zen and into meditation, we meet every Wednesday night at 7:30, Marsh Chapel in the basement, the Robinson Room. Next week, we actually have a very special guest coming. Her name is Zen Master Bon Yon. She's from the Cambridge Zen Center, and she's giving a Dharma talk. So that's going to be really
Awesome,
cool. She's been training Zen for years, and so it's going to be really cool to just be in her presence and speak to her.
So
about
that'll technically be this week, because
Well,
when we post
yeah,
this podcast,
yeah.
it'll be next
November
week. So,
7th.
Yes,
Yes.
November
Yeah,
7th.
there you go.
Very cool. All right,
Fuck
thank
yeah.
you so much, guys.
yeah, thank you so
Absolutely.
much.
Thank you, guys.
This was the Vitruvian Man Podcast 2.0 renewed. Like I said, bigger dicks, bigger conversations. That might be a tagline, might not be a tagline. We'll have to discuss it. I'm not really sure, but sayonara, motherfuckers.
Thank
See
you so
next
much.
week.
Yep.